Hi, it's Charles at Empress Mills and we're taking a look at the Prym Cone Holder today, which is fantastic for allowing you to use larger sized cones, which as we all know are far more economical to purchase rather than smaller bobbins, on your sewing machine, which may not come with an adapter, or even if it does come with an adapter, it may not come with an adapter big enough for the cone that you've got in mind. The cone holder itself comes on this, it comes sort of flat packed as it were, on this handy card, and it just shows a little bit about how to use it, but we're going to discuss that anyway. But I did want to show you from this point because it is very, very easy to pop together, once you can get in, of course. Let me just get the bits and bobs. So it comes out of its box. This is bagged together because it holds two parts together for you, which is the base and then also the prong, which holds the bobbin in place when you're sewing with it. That screws into position very easily, just like that. And then this section we'll add in just a moment to there. But just very quickly, first of all, to mention the base, it is metal. Prym have made this to be super quality. So it is metal. Not only is that good for it being robust, but it also adds quite significant weight to the cone holder itself. Again, which is fantastic when using larger cones in particular, because it'll just keep that base nice and sturdy all the time you're working with it. So as I say, it's got quite a significant amount of weight to it as that base. The guide element there, the guide element, all you do is unscrew this side screw there. Now you can do that with a star screwdriver, or as you can see, it's absolutely fine to do it with your fingers. It's nice and easy to unscrew. And then you simply pop that in, give it a wiggle, make sure it goes right to the bottom, and then screw that back in. And again, as I say, to be quite honest, that is absolutely fine done just with your fingers. Or alternatively, if you did want to use a screwdriver, I've come prepared, you can always tighten it up with that. But to be quite honest, it's not really needed. We've always just done it with our fingers in the past. It leaves that guide element free just for a little bit of movement, which is absolutely fine. You'll see in a minute on the sewing machine itself, that helps it just actually guide the thread into position. The base itself features this small recess, which helps it fit different size cones, which we'll take a peek at. So in terms of cones, that we've got a nice flat base to, that just sits absolutely fine. As you can see, it works absolutely fine just there, and it just sits around the outside of the recess. That, it looks like it's got some movement, but once it's up and running, it'll be absolutely fine, and it can move to the side slightly because that central element there will stop it from moving too far. It will be absolutely fine. And in terms of a much larger cone, this, you can see, has the cone element actually popping out of the bottom much more. That will sit nice and snugly into that recess. So it sits with a nice firm finish. And again, why is that important? Well, on a thread like this, to be honest, it doesn't make masses of difference. It just helps it sit snugly. But if the thread was more slippy, then that would sit and just allow the base of the thread to be that bit closer to the bottom of the cone holder itself, which will stop the thread from slipping off and gathering at the bottom. If you've had problems with that in the past, even when using a cone holder, a handy little tip is to just get a plastic bag, a little bit bigger than this maybe, scrunch it up, pop it over the prong itself, and if you want to cover the base you can do, obviously just depends on the size of the cone, but once you pop it over the prong itself, it gives the base element more of a dynamic finish, so it will actually mould itself more to the thread itself, so the cone itself. So if I just get a piece off here, as you will see, that sits snugly and it stops any movement, any ability of that thread to drop off the bottom, which again, doesn't matter when you're working with this. This is one of our Thread Plus cones. It holds itself together nice and well because it's a cotton outer, and the same with a 50 to 100% cotton, for example, for quilting. But if you're working with a machine embroidery thread, for example, that didn't have a base to its cone, then just that handy little tip will save you so much time. It will stop that thread from slipping off and away we go. If you're wondering, if you think that looks like a bit of an amateur fix, don't worry. We learnt that when we used to sell thread into industry, and there were entire workrooms throughout the UK with cone holders at the back of the machine with literally carrier bags popped over the top, just popped over the top and onto the base of the cone holder to create that same effect. It does seem a little bit makeshift, but it does the job so well. Just a handy little tip if you're working with a slippier thread. I'll take that off for the time being though. Now, the main question we tend to get in terms of the cone holders is placement, and the box itself comes with a little bit of a guide to that. So basically, you just sit it behind the machine in a position that allows it to flow into the machine in the same direction that your thread would normally. So the thread on this machine would normally sit there, feed off in that direction. So all you want to do is sit this cone holder behind the machine, perhaps at a little bit of an angle. You could bring it in a little bit more so it's feeding in that same direction. Pop the thread through there, through the guide, and then simply into the machine where you would expect it to sit anyway. That potentially just a little bit too far off at the back, you can nudge it forward to get these angles so they're as similar as possible to the original feed angle of the thread into the machine, and as you will see, that just flows off nice and easily from the cone itself. It's a really super useful, dead easy to use little addition to a sewing room. It really is. One extra little tip that I'll just finish on. I mentioned to Sheila, one of our wonderful team here at Empress, she does a lot of our sample pieces, does lots of sewing at home herself. And one of her little tips when using one of these cone holders, if you're working with a metallic thread or a particularly slippy thread, then to add a little bit of tension to this element, because as we all know, when you stop sewing, it often backs up just that little bit. If you get an inch wide strip of fabric, roll it up just into a tube, nothing complicated at all. In fact, you'll see how easy this is in a moment for me. Roll it up into a little strip just like that. Pop it into the guide on top of the thread. So the thread is already in there. Just pop it on top of the thread. And all that does is add just a touch of tension. It will still flow nice and easily once it gets going. There we go. And again, that's why that's useful to have a bit of movement. It allows it to settle. Once it's going, it still flows nice and freely, but it means that when you do stop sewing, this tension remains nice and tight on the thread element as it goes in. It stops that from falling loose, and it stops it from snagging, catching and snapping, and just being a frustrating restart to your sewing. So just a handy little tip from Sheila there. That's just about everything on the cone holder. Of course, if you've got any questions at all, please leave a comment, give us a call, message through the website or through any of our social media channels. We would love to answer any questions on this or any of the other items from the Empress ranges. Yes, I've covered everything. Thank you very much indeed for watching. See you again soon. Bye bye.